So the crackdown is not just on criminals. Following the federal intervention, a sweeping operation was launched to clear homeless encampments across the capital, particularly in the high-profile areas. So Foggy Bottom, Kennedy Center, East Street Expressway, and near the U.S. Institute of Peace. But prior to these operations, 70 encampments have already been removed since March 2025?
Yes. So let me kind of set the stage for this story, because Trump's efforts in federalizing police in D.C. goes beyond crime. He's also focusing on clearing out homeless encampments. And so after that DOJ staffer, Edward Korenstein, who of course also goes by Big Balls, was assaulted, he announced this plan, Trump announced this plan, and some interesting things have happened in D.C. ever since. So for instance, according to the Associated Press, Trump wrote on his social media site before Monday's news conference announcing the takeover that homeless people will have to leave immediately. Quote, "We will give you places to stay, but far from the Capitol," he posted. And so after he made that announcement, obviously very vague, people are like, you're going to give them places to stay. What does that mean? Where are they going to go? You say far away. And so reporters asked White House Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt about it. Let's see what she had to say.
Oh, we need a little volume on it, team.
To be offered addiction or mental health services, and if they refuse, they will be susceptible to fines or to jail time. Again, these are pre-existing laws that are already on the books. They have not been enforced, which is part of the reason for this federalizing of the National Guard to bring in this assistance for law enforcement. While we are targeting criminals and trying to remove criminals off of the streets, we also want to make D.C. safe and beautiful, and that involves removing mentally disturbed individuals and homeless encampments as well.
So the big concern is, are you criminalizing people living in poverty? Like, what's going on here? The reality is, okay, so let me just read that graphic, because according to the Associated Press, near the Institute of Peace on Thursday morning, AP journalists saw about a dozen homeless D.C. residents packing their belongings. Items weren't being forcibly thrown out by law enforcement, but an earth mover dug out and scooped away the remains of encampments, depositing them into the bed of an idling truck. And prior to Trump's announcement, I didn't know this, apparently the National Park Service had already cleared out like 70 encampments, but that got no attention, right? Because Trump wasn't involved, so that got no attention. But look, Trump getting involved has had an interesting impact on city leaders, because all of a sudden city leaders are like working overtime to find shelter, to create, a place for these people to live in, rather than just leaving them out on the streets. And the question is, why did it take Donald Trump for city leaders to do that? You get what I'm saying? Why was it okay to just allow people, many of whom do have mental health issues, they need mental health care, many of whom are struggling with addiction, why was it considered okay to just leave them out on the streets to suffer like that?
That's Schellenberger's position in San Francisco.
How is that?
They're dying of fentanyl overdoses. When you're done, I want to read you some of the crazy shit that happens in these tent camps.
No, but like, this is the thing that drives me crazy. How does the left make an argument that the kind thing to do, that the humane thing to do, is to allow your fellow Americans to suffer on the streets like that? And why did it take Donald Trump for you to want to do something about it?
Because in there, by the way, the same thing happened in Philadelphia. Our entire Benjamin Franklin Parkway, I don't know if you guys heard about it, was taken over by homeless encampments. And they thought the humane thing to do was basically to have these open-air drug markets. They were selling drugs, like right in front of the Rocky Steps.
That's exactly one of the things, right? So you've got violent crime that happens in there. You've got disputes, right, within the camp's residents and outsiders that escalate violence. You've got property crime and theft in the surrounding areas. You've got drug trafficking use.
Right there, like right open.
Sexual assault on women that are homeless is 10% higher in these tent camps. When they did the sweep, they found weapons, drugs, and the spillover of crime goes into the surrounding areas. And one thing that I neglected to mention in our first segment is that they have over 100 arrests now. It went in the federalization of the police force, and there is a connection here because they pulled out a bunch of criminals from these homeless camps, illegals, drugs, and weapons. So there's a definite concern that something should be done here.
Well, when you're struggling with addiction, and obviously because of that addiction, you're unemployed.
Right.
You're going to need resources in order to get, you know, your next hit or whatever. And so you're going to commit crimes in order to get the resources necessary to buy the drugs you need. Otherwise, you're going to get sick, right? Like, that is this vicious cycle that we're all witnessing on the streets in these big cities. I mean, Kaizen, you live in LA. I do too.
Go to you. I want to do one thing before I do go to you, because you and I sort of touched on it in the break. So before I go to you, I want to tee this one up. So one of the great ironies here is that Newsom, in August of 2024, when he thought he was going to be the nominee, started to like puff up his chest and fight with the Supreme Court. And he's like, we're going to clear these homeless encampments, and I demand every city start taking action. Can I see that clip where he's literally goes for the photo op?
He does a photo op, totally.
He goes for the photo op and starts clearing away all the homeless stuff and throwing it away.
That is giving AOC at the border. Remember when she was crying?
Yes.
No, it was a total photo op. Gavin Newsom, as governor of California, allowed this issue to become a really big problem in the state. And then once he realized it was a political liability and he plans to run for president, he's like, he starts fighting pretty hard to get the United States Supreme Court to rule on basically allowing cities to ban homeless encampments.
Right.
He is
But when Trump
a
does
Democrat,
it's racist and authoritarian.
But that's the thing. That's the thing that drives me crazy. The double standard, and how, like, if a Democrat does it, it's totally fine. If Trump does it, it's super offensive. So which one is it? Because Newsom fought for the right to be able to ban encampments.
All right, I'm coming to you. I unleash you, and then I'm going to go this way. I promise.
Yeah. So a few interesting things. This difference between being nice and kind.
Yeah.
Right. Like, what is actual humane treatment? Is it actually being nice to a homeless person to say, yeah, you can just sleep anywhere. You can sleep in the park. Yeah, you can do drugs in public. Is it actually being supportive of them, making the corrective changes that they need so that they can be empowered and get their life on track? I remember last Thanksgiving, I went to a friend's house and I met this guy, and you wouldn't know it from talking to him, but he was a former heroin addict. And he told me about, he reached rock bottom where he was a heroin addict, and I guess at some point he like acted out. The police threw him in prison. And when he was in prison, he had actual boundaries. Like, he couldn't just do whatever he wanted anymore, and he actually had to make a choice. He had to make a choice. Am I gonna continue on this path of degeneracy and hurting myself and hurting my future? Or am I going to respond to these hard constraints by getting my act together? And he chose to do that. Now he has a beautiful family, wife, kid.
That's great.
And if we allowed him to just continue on his path,
He would have been dead.
he would have been dead.
Yeah.
Right? And so it's like, nice is often when people are trying to be compassionate or empathetic, it's actually this fake nice.
Yes.
Where it's actually
Virtue
about
signal?
Yeah, it's a virtue signal that's
enabling.
more about making you feel good than creating a good outcome for the other person.
Yes.
Preach.
That
Yes.
is a absolute bar.
Yeah.
It's a song. You got to be cruel to be kind in the right measure, and in the right measure is the key there. At least Trump is doing something. I mean, it's ridiculous, the double standard, when you take into account the fact that when Gavin Newsom said he wanted to do something, clean up the city, I don't remember the exact figure, but wasn't it hundreds of millions of dollars that ended up being unaccounted for?
24 billion.
$24 billion.
Oh, wait, it was billions. Okay,
Billion.
sorry, I misspoke.
Get it right, Amy.
Billion with a B. Okay,
Yes.
that makes it so much worse.
No, it's infuriating. It's infuriating because it ended up being a racket to funnel taxpayer money from Californians to these nonprofits, many of which had ties to local politicians in California, and there was no accountability. Audit finds California spent $24 billion on homelessness in 5 years, didn't consistently track outcomes. And that wasn't the bug, that was the feature.
Right.
Okay, it was the theft of Californian tax dollars, and it did nothing to improve homelessness. During those 5 years, homelessness skyrocketed 30%. 30%. Because they focused on this, easy fix in their minds, right? Oh, it's just housing first. But no, it's not just housing first. These are people who need mental health care. Some of these people, are addicted to drugs, and they need detox and rehabilitation. Instead of detox and rehabilitation, the focus, at least in Los Angeles, was, oh, let's do harm reduction, which is helping them maintain their addiction through, safe needles, pipes, and all sorts of things. But after that policy was implemented, drug overdoses skyrocketed. During the pandemic, there was a man who died, okay, of an overdose at the entrance of our building. Okay, and it was the most horrific thing I had ever seen. That's cruelty.
Yes, absolutely. And one thing I want to make clear is when we basically shut down mental asylums, mentally ill people didn't just vanish into thin air.
100%.
Right.
They were either imprisoned or they're on the streets. Okay, we still need to do what we can to provide the facilities, to provide the opportunities for treatment and rehabilitation.
Yes.
But right now, we're just letting them, you know, lay out there.
So again, devil's advocate, what is the issue that people are taking with this? When the mental institutions were initially shut down, and I'm not privy to this info, was it like due to mistreatment?
Yes,
misdiagnosis?
it was. They were abusive,
Is the
very
concern
abusive.
that people have now that these people are just going to be
Take away their autonomy.
Exactly,
and
and,
it's
then
inherently
put
racist.
into a situation where possibly the same thing would play out. Is that the position of
Yeah.
people
But
who are
right now,
upset
they're
about
in
this?
such dire need of help that their autonomy leads to drug use. And
I mean, either way, I mean.
I'm just saying,
what
that
is the
goes
lesser
back
of-
to your amazing, really compelling argument. There's a strong distinction between being nice and kind.
Yeah.
You're what is it? You're enabling very destructive behavior
Enabling.
when you don't provide those programs for them to rebuild their lives.
Yes.
They need help.
And rather than say Trump is going too far, I actually think he's not going far enough. And here's why. People are saying, oh, well, you shouldn't be taking homeless people off the street because they're not going to have somewhere else to go. Then the demand should be Trump go further and take care of those people now that they have nowhere else to go.
100%, yes.
Don't say don't do anything. It's like if you're going to commit, go all the way and
Right.
actually take care of these people. But the solution is not to just allow the current situation to persist because
honestly,
that's not fixing
Yes,
itself.
amen. And it ties back to something we've been talking about for months. I'm sorry to mention this, but instead of taking instead of spending $116 billion a year and more, and that's a conservative estimate, some estimates put this figure at $500 billion. Instead of using billions of dollars on illegal aliens, we should be taking care of our fellow Americans who are living on the streets.
And to your point, Lindy, about the asylums that were absolutely abusive and terrible, I don't know why the idea of having new mental health facilities, modern mental health facilities, are automatically thought of as like the asylums of the 1950s.
Great point.
You know, we are smarter, we can be better,
Yes.
we are a rich country, and people need mental health care.
Yes.
And we need Congress, by the way, to allocate funding for it, because there's a lot of tough talk, especially after mass shootings, about how, oh, we need mental health care. But members of Congress, especially in the Republican Party, I'm keeping it real, always vote against allocating the necessary resources. We need to shift those resources to mental health care, and we need to help people detox and get rehabilitated so they can live good lives. I'm sick of seeing people die on the streets. And if you think that it is the good thing to do, the kind thing to do, to see people suffer on the streets like that because you're like on the left, but somehow you've bought into like this unhinged, far libertarian policy, you're wrong. You're just wrong. Your policies don't work. More people are dying as a result, and we're done with it.
Can I give you
couldn't
one thing on
agree.
policy,
Yeah.
real quick? So there were some pilot programs, or there are some pilot programs in California that follow this ethos of, okay, we're going to get you off the street. Now, in California, there's no criminal element, meaning you could go to jail. But we're going to get you off the street, and we're going to force you into treatment, or we're going to get you mental health care. So one of which is called the Care Plan, and there's something very similar called Laura's Law. So essentially, you would have the ability to say, all right, we're going to have a conservatorship, and we're going to force you into, this is just mental health, right? There's another one that extends to that, which is called Senate Bill 43, which allows you to 5150 addicts and force them into treatment. Now, the problem is that they're not forcing people into treatment, and there's no penalty for it. So the sign-ups are only 18% of the people that get proposed. However, and 35% in San Diego. But listen to this. So despite the fact that they weren't forced to be enrolled, the success rate was actually pretty significant. So it says that 81% of the people improved their well-being, 75% were forced into it, regained control of their life, 90% stayed with the medical adherence with regard to getting off of drugs. Like, if you can force them into it, those rates are not bad and better than nothing.
California used to have a really good program that's kind of been upended as a result of these newer policies.
Right.
And it was the drug courts. Basically, if you have committed a crime as a result of your addiction, the courts would give you the option of, okay, you could either go to jail or you can go through an inpatient rehabilitation program. And that program was actually very successful in helping people get clean and avoid having like a criminal record because of their drug addiction.
Is it still offered?
No, because we shifted to a harm reduction policy of helping them maintain their drug addiction.
It's like a woke approach.
Yeah. This isn't because I've known addicts throughout my life, and here's the thing: even addicts who want to change struggle to change unless they are nearly forced via an intervention, people coming in, helping them remove the triggers and the things that would entice them, right? The homeless people on the street, or these people who have, maybe antisocial behavior growing up, they didn't have the best influence, they're not going to have that. Right. Even the people who have that struggle to curb addiction.
Yes.
So how are we expecting these people to want to go in and say, okay, I will voluntarily sign myself up for this?
100%. And guess what, guys? It actually gets worse. Because in these progressive cities, there's something called supervised injection sites.
Oh, my God.
I kid you not. I kid you not.
Oh, God.
In Philadelphia, again, where I'm from, Governor Ed Rendell launched this program. This is a former governor of the Commonwealth doing this. They would have professionals watch as people partake in drugs. And if they...
So you don't overdose?
So they don't overdose. Yes, their argument is, at least someone's there. So if they overdose, we can save.
And look, I get the thinking behind the clean needles, right? Because you don't want people spreading.
To help them get off drugs.
Yeah, look, we've tried it. We've tried it, and it's not working.
I've neglected to mention is all of the disease that's rampant in there, and there are like flea-driven from rats, and that end up spreading all kinds of
on the
crazy
streets
diseases
is
throughout
it's amazing that we're like there's a huge portion of this country that's okay with it. It's the most inhumane, disgusting treatment of human beings I have ever seen in my life.
They're not okay with it, Anna. They're just pretending to be okay with it.
But they fight.
Look empathetic.
They fight viciously. Okay, Karen Bass, the mayor of Los Angeles, she just cleared an encampment in Van Nuys, California. This encampment was one of the biggest, and it was bad. Like, there was just a lot of suffering, right? So Karen Bass is very far left, so she's not going to criminalize these people. She offered them housing, and she says, she's on the record saying this. She was, of course, met with the activists. The activists were protesting her, and they were talking to the people in the encampments and telling them, reject the housing that's being offered to you. Karen Bass said that. She said that that's what the activists were telling the people in the encampments. How the hell is it good to keep people on the streets when there's housing literally being offered to them?
There's video of homeless people in these encampments saying that they don't want to go to the shelters. I swear to you, because they're not clean and their stuff could get stolen. I'm like, wait.
I mean, the encampments aren't clean and their stuff does get stolen. And in fact, people will get into these conflicts and light each other's tents on fire.
And they get like held up for rent by the local gangs.
Yes.
I want to go to final thoughts on this.
Yeah, so I think one of the things that people like to dance around when it comes to homelessness is just the idea of personal responsibility more generally. And we want to view people as helpless, oppressed, total victims who can't do anything. And the honest truth is that if you treat someone like a victim, they will victimize themselves. If you treat a homeless person like someone who's helpless, there's nothing they can do, they have to take drugs, so let's just make it safer for them to take drugs, then you're going to get that result. So what we need to start doing is actually treat them like a dignified human being and say, hey, look, what you're doing right now is hurting yourself, it's hurting everyone around you, and you can do better, but what you're doing right now is worse. There's a better way to live your life, and there's a worse way to live your life. And it's okay to say that. But we're so afraid of coming across as judgmental. This is where all this language comes from. Oh, no, you're racist or you're elitist or any of these things. Like, no, actually, the most loving and caring thing you can do to someone you care about is tell them the truth and hold them accountable. And then you support them with what they need to go on the path of righteousness, not the path of degeneracy and hurting themselves. Like, who does this benefit? At the end of the day,
think about it as your family member.
The NGOs
suffering from addiction on the streets.
If it was your family member, you would never treat them this way.
100%. Yeah, I agree.
Okay, there are two things that I want to end with. Number one, a concept called suicidal empathy. When you allow an indulgence behaviors, you're not only hurting the drug addict or even the homeless person, you're hurting the entire community. And let me talk about the macroeconomic repercussions, by the way. You're bringing down property values and making it unsafe for kids to go to school. I mean, the consequences are vast. And there's something else. this is really prevalent amongst progressives. There's something called oppression envy, because they themselves they're so privileged. You see them just protesting, like it's like protest tourism, shifting from one, protest
I thought that
to
was
another.
paid, actually.
Some of that is paid as well. Well, actually, that's funny because now DC. Did you see that the ads in DC are going up for paid protesters?
Nice.
Yeah, I saw that.
Yeah, exactly.
Nice.
But when people have this oppression envy, they latch onto these causes. They don't really have a deep understanding of it. They just think it's cool. For example, Maggie Gyllenhaal's daughter was at a random protest a couple of weeks ago. This is one of the most privileged children in the world. And they have no understanding that when they're abetting this behavior, they're actually enabling the self-destruction of the very people they're trying to help.
Yeah, and I think homelessness is something that requires a multi-pronged approach, because the fact of the matter is there are plenty of homeless people who are like couch surfing. They might have had an abusive husband and they left with their children, but they're staying with friends, and they can't afford a place to live. So you do need to increase our housing supply. There's no question about that. But when it comes to street homelessness, we have to differentiate between the two.
Good job. There is an
Yeah.
official definition of it. It's
Yeah.
like unsheltered. And
Unhoused,
I
yeah,
can't remember the exact, but
Unhoused.
Gavin Newsom
Yes.
used it to manipulate the statistics and said, oh, the vast majority are moms with kids, but it's ones that don't have a stable residence.
Yeah.
Not the people on the street, which are statistically high percentage of drug addiction
Yes.
and mental illness.
Exactly.
Yeah, can I make one last statement
Please
on
do.
Gavin Newsom? Because
Yeah, hopefully you would go for
I
it.
try to stay away
Please
from
do
personal
it.
statements, but he's a politician, he's a leader, right?
Yeah,
And
you're allowed.
I've noticed this trend where he was mayor of San Francisco, and then he failed upward to governor of California, and now in my mind he's trying to fail upward to the presidency.
100%.
Yes.
And I encourage everyone to just be very wary of people who are more focused on criticizing problem solvers than the problems themselves. And I noticed this trend where before Trump talks about something, Gavin is silent on the issue. But the moment Trump is focused on crime or homelessness, all of a sudden Gavin has so many things to say.
Yeah.
So to me, it's just transparent political maneuvering.
Yeah.
And to me, as someone who's been a California resident and has seen California go downhill in the last 11 years that I've been there, to me, what matters is not just what you're doing, but how you're doing it. And I don't see Gavin doing either.
Yeah.
So sure, the ways that Trump goes about doing things sometimes, they can be brash, they can be bold, they do create problems, but we shouldn't be so focused on the problems of the solutions that we miss the bigger problems that the solutions are intended to solve.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for watching Her Take. If you like the show, can you help us out by subscribing to the channel, clicking the notification button, sharing, commenting, joining the conversation? It helps us out a ton with the algorithm. We appreciate you.